The spaceport of Ardent Prime was alive with light. Beacons pulsed across the sky, guiding in the freighters that carried grain from Terran colonies and the patrol craft that still circled overhead after the war. Commander Elias Valen stood in the docking bay, hands clasped behind his back, trying not to let his thoughts drift. The base smelled of ozone, coolant, and the faint, bittersweet perfume of flowers, cargo meant for the alien envoys who were leaving today. He wasn't there to guard cargo. He was there for her. Princess Kareth of the Lyran Dominion, clad in armor that shimmered like liquid silver, walked with her delegation toward the shuttle that would carry them home. Her golden hair glowed under the artificial lights, her pale skin marked by faint blue sigils that told the story of her lineage. Months of negotiations had brought them here. Months of compromises and tense moments where the galaxy nearly slipped back into bloodshed. But the war had ended, and Kareth, fierce, brilliant, stubborn Kareth, was going home. Elias had fought her people once. He had stood across battlefields where Terran blood was spilled against Lyran blades. Yet, in the quiet aftermath, during the endless treaty discussions, he had found something in her that silenced every old hatred. She was leaving now. Perhaps forever. Kareth paused halfway up the ramp. For the first time that day, her piercing eyes turned toward him. The rest of her entourage filed inside, but she lingered, her expression unreadable. Then she walked toward him. Elias froze. His heart hammered against his ribs. The sound of the spaceport seemed to dull, until there was only her voice. "Before I leave," she said softly, her words carrying that delicate lilt of her people's tongue, "I want to ask you something." Elias felt his throat tighten. His pulse quickened. Every soldier's instinct told him to remain stoic, to stand straight and unmoving, but the man inside him, the one who had memorized every glance she'd ever given him, was trembling. And his heart froze from the excitement. "Middle," what could have been asked? He managed to speak, though his voice was rough. "Ask me anything." Her gaze held his, steady and unyielding. "Why did you spare me?" The memory came rushing back. The Battle of Vera's Belt, the last great clash before the war burned itself out. Elias had led the Terran assault on the Lyran flagship. They had boarded her ship, cornered her in the command deck. His men had raised their rifles. But Elias had lowered his hand. He had seen something in her eyes that day. Not fear. Not hatred. Something else. "You weren't my enemy in that moment," he said quietly. "You were someone standing between your people and annihilation. I knew the war was already lost for both of us, if we kept going." Her lips parted as if she wanted to argue, but instead she laughed, softly, incredulously. "You always sound like a philosopher when you should sound like a soldier." "Maybe," he admitted, "but philosophy is what kept me from killing you." She looked away then, toward the shuttle, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. Elias felt something burning inside him. She wasn't just asking about the past. She was asking about the future, whether sparing her had been a tactical decision or something far more dangerous. And he knew the truth. He had spared her because the thought of a galaxy without her in it had seemed unbearable. Memories in the silence. Over the months that followed the war, they had spoken often. In the council chambers, in the long empty corridors between sessions, sometimes even in the gardens of the capital, where stars were visible through the glass dome. She had asked him once if humans truly believed their own legends, that they were destined to rise, to overcome, to bend the stars themselves. He had answered honestly, "We believe it because no one else will believe it for us." She had smiled at that, not mockingly, not with derision, but with a quiet respect. Now, with her departure looming, Elias wondered if this was the last time he would ever see her. "Kareth," he said, her name sharp on his tongue. If I had a choice, I'd stop you from leaving. Her eyes widened, but she said nothing. The question behind the question. At last, she leaned closer. The faint scent of her armor's cooling crystals surrounded him. The real question, she whispered, is whether you would follow me if I asked. Elias's breath caught. He wanted to say yes. He wanted to tell her he would cross galaxies if it meant standing by her side. But duty anchored him. He was Terran fleet. His people needed him. And yet, Kareth wasn't simply an alien princess. She was Kareth, the woman who had challenged his beliefs, who had laughed at his stubbornness, who had made the endless nights of negotiations bearable with nothing more than her presence. He realized then that her question wasn't about loyalty. It was about courage. Would he have the courage to step beyond the lines drawn by war? He faltered, searching for words. But before he could answer, a voice called from the shuttle. Princess Kareth, we must depart. The spell shattered. She straightened, her expression unreadable once more. But as she turned to go, her hand brushed against his. Not by accident. I will ask again, she said softly, when the time is right. And then she was gone, ending the promise of return. The shuttle lifted from the bay, its engines flaring as it vanished into the sky. Elias stood there long after it disappeared, his chest heavy with words unsaid. Commander, one of his officers called. Are you all right? He nodded, though his voice was quiet. No, not yet. That night, alone in his quarters, Elias replayed her words again and again. Before I leave, I want to ask you something. The memory burned, twisting into both ache and hope. He realized then that the war had not truly ended. Not for him, because the battle he now faced was not between fleets or empires. It was within himself, between duty and desire, between fear and courage. And when the time came, when Kareth asked again, he knew his answer. Yes, he would follow. Because humanity's greatest strength had never been its weapons, its fleets, or even its endless resilience. It was the ability to choose connection over division, to reach out across the gulf of difference and say, I see you. I will not let you go. For Elias, it wasn't just peace between species that mattered. It was Kareth. It had always been her. And so he waited, not as a commander of Terran forces, not as the hero of a war, but as a man who had found something worth more than victory. Somewhere among the stars, she was waiting too.